Three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Mindful Leadership podcast. I'm here with my wonderful host, depending on which way you look or listen, wonderful host, co-host Natasha Rocha. Hello, Natasha,
Hi, everybody. Hi, John. Hi, Angie.
and welcome back, special guest Angie Garton. It's so wonderful to have you back here. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me back. Yeah, it's always good to come back and have another chat.
Yay. And it's Natasha, it's your turn to do. I can't remember if I introduced Angie last time, so I don't know if this is practice or not. But yeah, please do go ahead with Angie's intro.
Absolutely. So Angie's intro is really about, she says that her LinkedIn profile has a partial history of her career. So go find her in LinkedIn and make sure you follow her as well. But here's a little bit more. So she's done a lot from, starting her working life in wildlife science, 10 years in the army, personal training, nutrition coaching, counseling skills. She continues to add certificates and skill sets to continue to help women at their depth and the level that they need most. So Angie's focus is on helping women to feel more reassured about menopause, confident about their health and wellness at midlife, and feeling content in who they are becoming. Using the whole woman wellness method for peri and postmenopausal women, Angie will empower you to choose what she'll empower you with choice and inspiration to help you find your own path forwards through midlife, whilst giving you the physical and mental tools to ease your way through the significant life transition. And Angie works with individuals and small groups online and in person, privately, and for corporate organizations as well. So thank you. Welcome back. It's always so good to talk to you about this. And I think it's so important nowadays in this mystifying what's going on, because I think in this day and age, we've got so much information at us. We don't know how to really work through that. Sometimes we have too much information. We don't know what's right. And other times we don't have any information at all
Mm.
because people are scared to broach these, or share these, things that we're all going through as well. So yeah, how have you found that?
Yeah, very much so. When I first started coaching, I was probably a very lonely voice in the void, and I was living in Edinburgh at the time and used to do a lot of workshops and things. Um, and no one was talking about menopause, and it took a while for me to really learn enough to feel confident enough for me to say yes, that's my specialist area of interest, and bringing all my sort of skills and tools together. That was my specialist area where I could really help women. And there was a massive just void of information. People didn't really understand the word, is still struggle to understand what menopause and midlife are. And yeah, if I started talking about perimenopause, then there was just a lot of blank faces. So we've gone from, yeah, just a non-information environment to, whoa, you put that into Google now and you get a million hits, and people just don't know what to believe. And especially with just this rise and rise of social media experts, shall we say, it becomes even more difficult to really filter out a lot of the noise so you know what's really right for you.
Mhm. Do you think that just looking at it from kind of like a lot of people that I work with, they're very much kind of like, or that we're hoping to help, they're very much kind of like, I'll ignore my body. I just need to work. I just need to focus. I just need to move on. Um, and a lot of the work is really about coming back into the body and listening to the body in being able to actually move forward and be more efficient and be more mindful in life, in business, and in your career. What are some of the tools or how do you navigate that and actually teaching us to listen to the body? Because we've been taught for so many years to just ignore the body because it's such a fascinating, incredible machine that usually just keeps going until it doesn't. And then that's when it forces us to basically look at our lives. But how can we prevent that space of kind of like hitting that wall, before that? Do you have any tools that would help people?
Yeah, first off, it's around removing, if we can, or being aware to start with. We can't change what we're not aware of course. So bringing the awareness to the shame that we have, that's been given to us and passed on to us around aging and menopause. So we have been passed on this narrative around menopause being something to hide, to worry about, something that's going to take away, you know, and it's been proven and shown. And I've had many experiences with clients where it's been shown to them through their own experiences that it will take away, in some cases, their autonomy, choices around not just lifestyle, but the way they live their life, but work as well. So this sort of you're on a different pile of, you're not as good as you were, sort of thing, and people are fearing that, and of course we don't want to admit, if that's the case, we don't want to admit that that's where we are in life, getting older, midlife, menopause. We don't want to associate ourselves with becoming less than others or less than our most productive selves, because that's kind of how society measures worth and value, isn't it? So I think first off, it's being aware of that, and knowing that you can change that narrative yourself. You don't. It's not always easy, and depending on the environments and places that you go, the people that you're around. But if we are stuck in ourselves, if we're stuck in that feeling of this is something that's really bad that's going to happen to me, it's going to change my life for the worse, and there's no life after menopause, sort of thing. If we're stuck around that, then of course we don't want to be in our own body. We're going to do all we can to, try and remove that. So I think that is one of the biggest issues, really.
I was going to um, just build on that theme of ignoring our bodies, because I just want to call out, for the sake of the conversation, that this isn't just a happy starting point, right, for humanity, where we're saying, oh, the menopause, oh, that's just one thing by itself. Unfortunately, we have all these other things as well. And um, one of the things that I used to do to myself all the time when I was working full time in corporate jobs, especially, is I was like Natasha was hinting at, like I would just abuse my body. I would literally, like, my internal conversations would be, "Shut up, body!
Mhm.
Just here's a run in the morning. Here's some coffee. Here's food. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear your nonsense." And and then there's this other thing that I was not really aware of, which is aging. You know, that aging has, I mean, it has many benefits, right? That we don't always talk about. Like,
Mhm.
wow, I've done this thing now 1 million times in my life. I think I'm starting to learn a pattern. I'm learning from experience how to do some of this better, or to deal with some of these crises in my work or in my life like easier. Um, and then there's other things that do happen, like well, I don't know about you guys, but my memory is not quite what it used to be. I tend to write a lot of lists and to-do lists, and I also, what I really learned, what I've found much easier is, now that I work for myself, is listening to my body each day and having a body conversation. For me, it's really simple. I just place my hand on my heart and I say, "Body," each morning. I often look at my calendar. I've got it on my phone and be like, "Body, how do you feel? Heart, how do you feel about today?" And and it might be, oh, like this morning I moved a collaboration from before this recording to tomorrow. It's like, I don't need to do it today. It's better to have that space to sit down for maybe 40 minutes and rest before today's recording. So I'm kind of leading up to a question, and that is that, and so when my last 8 years at corporate at Amazon, and prior to that, I had about 20 years total of experience of managing people. I'm not being a good male or otherwise manager at listening to people about their health, their bodies, and certainly until relatively recently, till the last couple of years, really ignorant about, totally naive about menopause. Um, and I was, because I feel like, because I feel like awkward as a man to say, are you going through perimenopause?
Mhm.
Whereas I must admit, in like that would be in the workplace now, that uh, as a quantum energy healer and a psychic reader, often this will come up in conversations, and it's very natural in those moments because we're talking about people's lives, and it feels very appropriate because it's so dominant in someone's individual life. And I was really interested in the workplace, like what can managers do, whether they're male or female, um, to help kind of educate themselves and also approach the matter of health, and as part of that, um, you know, especially the perimenopause discussions.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It can be really tricky because it's a relatively short period of time. If we think, me starting out 9 years ago, nearly 10 years ago, um, talking about menopause, gaining clients, and standing on my soapbox talking about it. Less than 10 years later, then all this information out here, and corporate has not caught up. The rest of
Mm,
the world hasn't caught up, so you're not alone in feeling awkward about
mm,
that. Women to women often feel awkward about talking about that. So yeah, I can only imagine how that feels from your position. Um, Talking to the conversations that I have in workplaces and organizations, the things that I've seen work well are things like when there is a space, when I'm thinking of space, I'm thinking of if there is already some kind of community, or mental health group within a workplace, some kind of way of facilitating conversation around health before we even start talking about menopause. But if there's
mm,
some way of just approaching health as a topic, that's a really good foot in the door to that wider wider conversation, and then we can narrow it down to women's health issues if we need to. But first off, is there a way of just talking about, because corporate can be like 10 employees, 5 employees, or it could be 500. There's a lot of scope for differences there. It can be very dry environments in lots of different ways, can't it?
yeah,
And we're it's talking about Natasha talking about that disconnect from mind and body. We're taught that. I never worked in corporate, but I can see that is sort of built into the culture. It's all about the bottom line and ticking boxes and things. Not for all organizations for sure, but a lot of the time that's what it's about. um, but I am seeing changes. So first off, if there is a way of having a conversation around health, it might be within a group. There are things like mental health champions I see these days, and that's it's a small sideways step then to having a menopause group or a midlife health group, which can be open to specific gender groups or to everybody. And often it's done voluntarily, which is a shame, but at least it can be done. If somebody takes on that responsibility and says they're going to do that, then there's ways of means within an organization to make that happen. The other way is to start to look at, if you often there well usually it's quite regular where you have those one-to-ones with your line manager, things like that, whether it's on a yearly basis or quarterly or something. And there's forms that you fill out and all of that beforehand. Is there a way of including health around that before we talk about menopause, but just health as a whole, and then bringing that down into more specific queries around menopause, and giving the employee a chance to say what might be on their mind, whether that's in person or even anonymously, So there can be ways of avoiding having it on your record, sort of thing. So I've seen in businesses where there can be suggestions boxes around things that they want included on policies, health policies, employee assistance programs, and suggestions that can be taken seriously. And then things like on a policy where you have sickness absence that's recorded, and obviously that is recorded, but is there a way of ticking a box to say I'm not coming in today, or I'll be late today because I've got an appointment for the GP to go and talk about my menopause, my perimenopause, whatever it might be, or I'm not coming in this afternoon because my symptoms are just too bad. Is there a box to tick for that? And to have that happen, we've got to have some conversations around that. There's got to be some things in place. But those are the things I'm always starting to look towards in an organization, asking, is there capacity for that? Can we do that somehow? How do we make that happen?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I've had a vision of organizations having somebody that does look at the physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual health of people as a consultant that is there on. I don't know how far in the future that is, but I do think that that is happening. But
Yeah.
as you were speaking, what I was thinking about is sometimes even if we do create that environment, we still need to get the buy-in from a person to actually go in and see that, right? In giving them permission as well. So it's like we almost need to work on both sides of the thing, because I noticed that and I think especially in corporate, when times get busy, the first thing that slips is our own self-care.
Mm.
That's what we put on the back burner, right? So it's I think that the challenge is really looking at it in the space of kind of like allowing both sides to maybe give permission to have a look at that or prioritize that. So when I was in Canada, my the company that my ex-husband worked for or is working for now, they were really, really good in the sense that where they were like, we don't allow overtime. If you want overtime, you need to ask for permission.
Mm.
Right? Which I thought was an incredible value to have in there and kind of like justified, because it makes absolute sense in the sense of if you're needing to work overtime, maybe we're understaffed, or maybe we need to do time management or whatever it may be. And I'm wondering if we look at mental health in the same way, in that sense of going, okay, you have perhaps X amount of hours a year that you need to hit, even if you just go and just spend that hour just speaking to a person, or have various kind of like modalities that might help to initiate that,
Mm.
like on an annual basis. So it's like, okay, review time's coming up. Have you done your monthly or whatever, just to start getting in that buy-in of mental health check-in or wellness check-in or whatever it may be, even if it's just to sit and vent for an hour and somebody to listen, whatever it may be that might allow it. I don't know what the solution, but we would have to hit, I think, both sides and saying you're worthy and deserving of that hour of yourself, right? And it's not a cop out, it's actually the value of it. And I think it's a huge thing that John and I do in the sense of slow down in order to speed up, give from overflow instead of from empty, those kind of things that are coming in that are quite important. So yeah, I think we've got a massive journey ahead of us, but I think it's awesome that we're starting somewhere in the
Yeah.
sense of allowing it. And yeah, and is it something to do with the self-worth? Is it,
Well,
how does
yeah. This
yeah.
is why at the after your for your first question, that's
Mm,
why I want us all to look at how
mm,
we view aging and menopause, because yeah, it's a systemic thing where we
yeah,
we view it as, good and bad, worse, better, rather than just different, and
yeah.
our value being just so intrinsically linked with productivity and like John was saying, memory and things like that. So there's so much to look at, but if we do ignore that shame around it, that embarrassment around aging, that feeling of, oh, I'm past it, or when you get those comments like, "Oh, she looks good for her age," or "Oh, you be careful doing that at your age," they
Yeah.
really just throw away comments, but they
Mhm.
are so meaningful, and they can be said in any sort of situation, and they're everywhere. So we've really got to look at this stuff, because it's so interlinked with the menopause issue as well, around that thing of the corporate problems that we've already talked about, and I do see it as problems, but yeah, there are solutions to it, but it starts on an individual level for all of us.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
One one thing I used to do as a manager was I would always, so I do a weekly one-to-one
Hmm.
in with each team member, and and sometimes that's really hard, especially when you have like loads of people, right? And so sometimes if I was, especially at times I was managing maybe 70 people in different companies, I would the habit I got into was the first thing I'd say to someone as a fellow human is I'd just say, "How are you? How are you doing?" I would never ask, when's project A? Is it going to be finished by date B? I'd never go into business. I'd always just ask that, like, talk to the human first. And it, especially as I got older, and I guess, lightly, a lot of my teams were kind of aging as well, was that I started to hear more. Like, it's almost like the diversity of experiences continues as we age because our lives are longer. We've had more experiences, and I started to get some surprising answers. And I started also to ask a bit more about stress and anxiety, like how if you could put it on a scale of 1 to 10, these are just the first one or two questions. So trying to get out of my manager head and just trying to ask the human, how are they feeling? And you could tell sometimes people would be saying, I'm about a 6, and they're like kind of but their reaction was kind of like quite intense. It was like, I don't know what you would be like at 10 out of 10 stress levels, but they they would give you something. And they'd often just start to talk about, well, I've also got this thing going on in my life. It might be, some challenges at home. It might be a big holiday or sabbatical coming up. It might be a big event coming up in their hobbies or their passions outside of work. And it can also be their health. And that would often change the complete discussion because you wouldn't just because you're thinking in the back of your mind, well, my boss just been giving me a hard time about us not hitting this deadline, and there's no point in me putting more pressure on this person. They've already got too much. I need to like, I this is more helpful than me just saying, passing on the buck. Just going, you just need to like do what that guy says. Um, and yeah, I found that a really helpful conversation. I think the other theme that Natasha and I keep coming back to through these podcasts is that our health and our self-care are not they're not like it's not like a nice to have, that
Mm.
it is actually the fuel for our business. It is the fuel for our productivity, and that it is also its own form of productivity. The productivity we're kind of programming ourselves to say, if I'm typing, I'm doing, and so they're like, type faster, everybody,
Mm.
and actually what we should be saying is stop, right? Just stop and receive. You can literally receive more income, more clients, more happy experiences. You get to listen to your clients,
Mm.
listen to your team members, listen to your employees, and that's receiving. You receive far more if you just
Mhm.
stop talking and stop doing and take a moment to receive. And that's been a huge transformation in my personal life, is that I don't push so hard and I create these big gaps between my client sessions, for example, only do like 2 or 3 a day. And so there's the that you can describe as a gap, like, what are you doing, John? What are you doing in between? It's like, well, I'm receiving new ideas, new inspiration, reflecting on what my clients are doing, asking my body, what do I need to do? Is it a walk in nature? Is it a long nap? Is it a long lunch? These are big things to for us all to shift. And I know we're not going to do it all at once. But yeah, I was interested, Angie, in your thoughts on how we can start to perhaps shift those like one-to-one human conversations, uh, and especially like begin to just kind of challenge a bit more about our traditional view of productivity, because personally I feel that changes like the menopause offer massive opportunities for the human race. A good reason why um, women go through this, and I feel that it's, it does really help us open up to doing less, um, to be able to receive more and to be more productive as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of conversations I have with the ladies that I help, or women who are just struggling and don't know really where else to turn, and they come to me and say, "Oh, I'm not sure if you can help, but da 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 da." And often
Mm.
there's something around energy in there quite a lot, and
Yeah.
they feel I don't have enough energy to do all that I need to do, all that I want to do. And I just feel like I'm behind all the time and not getting things done. And a lot of the time they already were before all of the menopause issues started to occur. And is it because of life? Is it because of hormonal changes? There's a lot of overlap there, a lot of overlap. But
Mm.
when they start to notice these shifts within themselves, particularly around energy and capacity to do, they already were over giving for like years and years worth. And then they get to the point where they just can't do any more, any quicker, any faster, and pile more stuff on. And something has to give. So they have to start taking things off their plate and start doing less or slowing down a little bit. So it feels, in comparison to how they were living at full pace, 110 miles an hour, it feels like they are losing time, losing track of what needs to be done, and not doing enough. When actually, it's actually that they've reached capacity. It wasn't ideal how they were living before. And yeah, I think that there's only so long that we can keep going at that speed, at that top level. And although it can often feel very productive and satisfying, and achieving all this at home and at work and whatever, and it can feel like we get rewards for that in many different ways, from ourselves, externally. But it's there's there comes a point where your body reaches its no more point, and we start to feel that. But it feels so different. It can feel wrong for a lot of people, a lot of women I speak to, that there's something wrong. Whereas really, it's the body is trying to tell them the right thing. We can't go at this pace,
Mm-hmm.
menopause or not. That's almost off the table. We can't keep living at this pace, even if we didn't have peri or postmenopause. So I think there's a lot to be said for listening to what our body is trying to tell us. But as we said at the beginning, there's that disconnect again, and dropping into how do I feel without drawing a line here can feel just so different for a lot of people, and difficult. And that's often where I start to teach them things and help them to, not massive changes, but to look at and question, and to look at the way that they've been valuing themselves. So I don't go straight in and start to help them with, right, we're going to do this meditation and this breath work, and this and this. I'm not so much about adding more stuff on when they're already overwhelmed. It's more about questioning, make some space for that, for them to feel a little bit more at ease with the changes that are happening. So can we question, where does your value come from? What do you like about yourself? What's important to you? Are you living those values? Is there a disconnect between head and heart? Like what's the thing that's driving you? And having some of those deeper conversations, it takes some trust, it takes some time. It's not something that we'd start talking about in the first 5 minutes, like with you, Jon. It takes some time. How are you? And then we go from there. And there's a lot of value from this, but it takes time, and helping women to question how they've been valuing themselves can help. It sounds in a roundabout way, but it helps them eventually with accepting some of the changes. And accepting changes doesn't mean that we're just putting up with it, but accepting changes within the body so that we're not battling and fighting ourselves quite so much on that energy level. And then that can start to change how we start thinking and valuing ourselves. It all works together. It's got to come in a loop, really.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that there's so much to unpack there because Jon, I love that you actually looked at your people as human people. And I think that that is a soft skill that needs to be taught as part of leadership. And it's creating that space for allowing that to happen, which is as is important because it also gives the people an allowance to be a people.
Mm.
Right? Because we get to that stage where like, what do you mean you don't want me to just be typing away faster and faster? You know, it's like I can actually slow down and I can listen to who I am. But you're right, in all forms of life, Angie, like I remember when I first came to the UK, I was 21 and I had three jobs. And I thought, when you're 21, I mean, sleep is for the dead. You've got like so much energy, it's fine, right? Until after 3 months, I remember I used to have, on Fridays, I used to work 21 hours. And I used to have Thursday nights off and Sundays off. But what I was doing was like I was a little bit depressed, not depressed. Yeah, well, I suppose teetering on that. And it was a distraction for me to work so hard because I didn't have to think. You
Yeah.
know, I didn't have to feel, I didn't have to do any of that. I was just became that robot. And I remember I had some friends came to visit me and I was so sick. My body was just like done. I couldn't even sit on my bum. I actually had to lie down for like a week. And my poor friends, I was like, this is the map to Princess Street. This is what you can do. This is the bus you can catch. I'm so sorry. But it was, my body was just like, it was done. And it's, you're right. It's a complete mindset in that sense of kind of like, what is your body telling you? You know, what is this that is happening, and giving yourself permission to allow it, because a lot of the times we feel ashamed because we can't do that, right? Because it's the productivity. But I think what we're not understanding is the more you slow down, the more productive you are. And I just always see it like putting fuel into a car. If you fill the tank completely, you can go so much further than needing to continuously top up because it's just a little bit here, a little bit there. It doesn't take you very far, and you need to start slowing down all the time. The other thing that I'm finding as well is that the medical system does not support menopause either, unless you go to somebody that is specialist. And I think there's a gap of knowledge in that sense as well. I don't, maybe it's just what I've experienced. What have you found, Angie?
It's very much on a spectrum with
Yeah.
medical support. I've spoken to GPs. I've interviewed GPs for my membership. I've befriended a few, um, and and there's some really really good ones. And then I hear lots of stories on either end. I hear people's experiences because they're the ones that obviously shout the loudest, aren't they? You're either cheering on your GP practice because they helped you so much, or you feel absolutely dissatisfied and hard done to, and you know that there's better care out there, and why shouldn't you have access to that? And I totally agree. I don't hear very much in the middle, but I know they're out there. So there are systems of support and help out there, but it's still not a standardized thing where you can go to any GP and get the same level of care as a woman in your 40s or 50s. And that's appalling. And um, I feel, disappointed to have to say that. And I don't want to have to say that as a woman in that age bracket with friends in the medical system, trying to do their job to the best that they can, 10 minutes to try and help you, looking
Mhm.
from their side of things. Often GPs haven't had enough training to be able to help us. That is starting to change, and there is a bit more help out there for them to do it. but they have to elect themselves to go on a course, and there are courses there available to learn more, and then it's up to them to top up their education and training around it and keep up to date, because it is an emerging science. Thankfully, we're getting more research and data around all of this to help us. There's a lot of trends that just keep pumping out more data, and a lot of it is not like breaking new ground, totally off the wall stuff that we never heard about, but you've got to keep up to date with topics and trends and new practices and new drugs and things that come out. I always point my clients towards the British Menopause Society. They have a great website, and there's information there for clinicians as well as the average layperson. And then the British Menopause Society is it's unbiased, so they collect all the information that's out there. So the GPs will use the information there alongside what they're taught and their training to help them understand what would be the best approach for any person off the street going in and asking for help around all of this. And then, so if we can see where they're getting their information from, I think that's more transparent. It encourages a little bit more trust, and helpful for me to say, yeah, that's where you can read about that information that also your GP has access to. So it's quite the BMS website has a lot of information. It's very meaty, I want to say. It's a lot of information on there, a lot of fact sheets and stuff, but they have a little bit more of a user-friendly arm of the women's health concern, and that's the same kind of information. It's made by the same people, but it's more funneled towards the average patient, so it's sort of presented in a slightly easier format to be able to read. Not that we're not stupid, we are clever people, and we've had to become our own researchers, so we're not totally coming from this from a blank page, but that information there is really easily digestible, especially when it comes to new stuff that comes out. So yeah, I completely agree. I completely appreciate where you're coming from. Especially when you start to have these conversations, either if you're lucky enough to be able to have that at work, those conversations around, oh, what are you doing? It always comes down to what this has helped me, or if somebody's had particularly good treatment or an approach that's really turned their life around, they become quite vocal, and they are wanting to help other people, and then they end up talking about it sometimes in a way that can sound like they're very passionate about it, but it can sound like they've got the answer. So other people who might be struggling a bit or not getting quite the level of support that they need or want from medical approach, then start to listen to these other people, get irritated by the fact that they're not getting that same level of support, and so it becomes a thing of why are they getting that and I'm not, and where do I go to help myself get more of this? And it becomes a bit of turmoil, but everyone's different, everyone has a different need, and everyone has a different experience of it, because we've got that external background that layers on top of the internal changes that are going on. So what happened to your friend or your colleague, although it might sound similar to what you're going through, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need the same approach as they are doing. So there's often that grass is greener sort of thing I see, particularly with medical approaches. And it can be very tricky for the individual woman, because we're putting our trust in our GP or our specialist doctor, or somebody we've waited for a long time perhaps to go and see, and we've got to trust that they're going to do the right thing for us and say the right things and get us the right appointments. And that's hard when you're struggling. That can be quite a leap of faith when you don't always have that trust in the healthcare system. So there's a lot of arms and legs to this, and a lot of changes that I see have been made, but still a long way to go for every woman to feel like they're getting what they need. And that's how it should be. But yeah, the NHS, as amazing as it is, it was just not set up to be like this proactive approach. It was, yeah, it's great for broken bones and cancer, and but menopause, it feels like it's a second thought, the way that it's been built, the systems to help us. So yeah, I get a bit passionate about this, but it's tricky because I don't want to criticize individual GPs who are working themselves into the ground, like we've already talked about, and they are often doing their best. And then for some way you feel like they don't have the patient skills, in every sense of the word, to help us. Yeah, that can be an issue too. But yeah, it's a really tricky situation that does need to improve. I don't know how to improve it, but it does need to improve.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. And I agree with everything that you've said. I wonder, speaking of the grass being greener and somewhere else, are there any cultures, whether they be, indigenous or any other cultures around the world that actually celebrate menopause? Or see it in a different light, see it as a space of reaching a space of wisdom, see it as reaching a freedom of childbirth, see it as reaching a like that see it in a light of, you're now an elder, you've experienced life, you're moving through another part of your life, right? Have you found any research that supports that, or anything that we can have a look at that culture in what they eat and how they approach it, whatever it may be?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know that it's celebrated as a menopause being a celebration as such. I haven't yet seen a greetings card with "Happy
I
Menopause."
know, no, but you know what I mean. It's like,
But
you're
yeah,
reaching
there
this
are.
age of wisdom, or, like teenagers, they're like, oh my goodness, you're getting so grown up. You're a teenager, or you're a woman, or you're a man, or whatever it is. We celebrate that stage. Why wouldn't we celebrate the stage? How can we look at it so that we can kind of like go, okay, I'm in this stage, let's do it. This is what it means.
Yeah, and there are, you're absolutely right. There are cultures, tend to be Eastern rather than Western
Okay.
cultures, who have more respect for aging and see that as, yes, we're sort of progressing, well, not sort of, we are progressing through our elder years with demands more respect from the community, and you sort of go up in status, really. And that has been researched around the topic of comparing Eastern and Western approaches. In the cultures who deem getting older as being higher status within the community, they don't get as many symptoms that are deemed negative, that are deemed a problem for them on a personal level. When cultures have grown up with, so we're talking about the intrinsic values that we're given, passed down, as aging is a problem, younger is better, all of those things. When we have grown up with that and it's been passed on to us, we're more likely to have physical, mental issues around the peri to postmenopause phase. So it's not just that there are differences in diet, and there's differences in lifestyle. There's research that's looked at, okay, so they're eating more soy, it must be the soy. They're eating more fermented vegetables, it must be. It's not, it's a combination of it all. It's
Beautiful.
body and mind, as we would we would expect, and kind of a relief to say, to be to be honest, that your body is not separate from your mind. So it's not just, oh, let's eat like they eat, let's let's live our lives on their body clock. it's not quite as simple as that because we're not machines. So
No.
it's the cultures as a whole that makes the difference. Yeah. So it
Yeah, I was.
really leads to that point. Sorry, John. It really leads to
That's
that
okay.
point of saying we have a choice how
Hmm.
we see aging in our mind. Our body will do what it does, and we can support that in many ways. But how we view aging is our choice.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, I was going to, when I personally take a step back and view humanity and the trends I've seen in my lifetime of us, um, I agree with all these things. Like we obsess so much about being younger, being young and successful, young and rich, young and productive, or with a great job title or something. That what's really bizarre is that it feels like that's compressing, and then but as well, our lifespan is lengthening,
Mm.
and that we are, that menopause isn't the end of our lifespan. And in fact, it goes, it finally feels like middle age. Because if, if you look at Wikipedia, I think it says like something like 45 to 60. I'm like, wow, that's like, am I gonna live to like 120? And it's that feeling of, well, actually, yeah, like we're getting much, much older. We're living much, much longer. And my feeling is that what we seem to be concentrating in our early years, our 20 and 30s, is we're actually amplifying, if left unchecked, this accelerating feeling of burning out. Like
Mm.
we're learning that, oh, actually, if I do all the things that my society is telling me to do, and I'm super productive and I ignore my body, in the first 10 to 20 years, I will have fully burnt myself out. And then either male or female, I'm then also faced with challenges around my body. First of all, like saying no, I'm mutinying, like Natasha's like, I'm gonna lie down now. You can like figure out what you want to do as a career, but I'm not doing this.
Mhm.
And then secondly, our body's actually saying, okay, and I'm also going to go through things like perimenopause and menopause. And I personally went through a lot of burnout before I changed career, and it was a driving force for me. It was like one of the things I needed to find a different way. And I love a lot of these conversations. They're not, it's never about, I never felt like I've lost out. I felt like I've gained so much more flexibility. Financially, it's worked out fantastically well. There's it's doing less to receive more. Um, and I also, one topic we didn't touch on so much was also, I have a couple of clients that have been through what I perceived in my naivety as very early perimenopause. So they went into menopause in mid 30s, and it's like, and so they were like, I think they found it even harder, in part because it's a few years ago, and also because um, it's like it doesn't fit with the rule book, right?
Yeah.
And and a couple that are much later, a couple that said to me, I'm not sure I ever really noticed the menopause. And I was like, oh, that's also new to me. I didn't know that, you can have all these massive variations of experiences. I think what I was interested in your your thoughts, Angie, is how do we first of all get better about kind of just promoting like the general health? And there was, you mentioned like NHS kind of like helping with the emergencies. And I found that in the workplace too.
Mm.
Like they would have, typically companies will have a kind of the sometimes it's called the employee access, like emergency program. So it's like something horrific, life-changing has happened, but not really designed to support or even prevent a lot of these challenges. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on uh, the experiences of people going in, especially very early into menopause.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. I think that first question I think is really important. It's a lot of the bread and butter of my job, my work,
Mm,
is around helping people to do the basics, the foundations. I don't like to call it the basics because then it sounds like a bit condescending. Like, have you drunk
Yeah.
enough water today?
Yeah.
Sleep last night? Of course I did. I'm just really irritable. Menopause. I'm not like that because I wouldn't last very long in my role.
Mhm.
Promoting what really is foundational to our health is not an easy task. It's not an easy task, and I find it difficult to talk about it to people who um, aren't yet ready to hear it. I have my approach, as you know, whole woman wellness method, and
Mhm.
one arm of that, one little branch, is talking about the foundational aspects. And there's different words. Some people call it pillars of health. I could say it's foundations or it's big rocks. If you think of getting a cup or a mug or something and filling it with getting on the beach and finding some big pebbles, some big stones, not the sand but some big stones, and filling that cup, and then pouring the little bits, the sand and things in between. I think of, to try and get as much in that mug as possible, I think of those big rocks as being slowing down, sleep, rest, looking after ourselves, proper self-care. Like, what's going on in here? Which is not an easy thing to do. And but I have ways to help people do that. And then food and different types of movement and all that kind of stuff. What we generally think of as being common sense health approaches, but it's not always common sense because we've been given some misdirection over the years, and what we tend to think of as being applicable, particularly at times of stress and additional need, like peri and postmenopause and early menopause, is we get our mug and instead of filling it with big rocks, we carry on what we're doing and we fill it with sand, we fill it with supplements that are dead expensive. We don't know what they're doing, but it says menopause on the front, so it must be good for me. And I don't knock people who do things like that. There's lots of different types of sand that we might put in that we think are doing good for ourselves, but are not the foundations for health. And we miss out the what's in here. And we fill it instead with what can I buy off the shelf that tells me I'm going to feel better now because I need it now because I feel really shit.
Yeah.
And there's no um, easy there's no shortcut. So a lot of my work is about helping people to take an approach that's appropriate for them, and it's not right, we're going to start on this diet tomorrow. And I don't do diets, but it's a slowly approach, and it starts where they are, and it starts with what they're struggling with, and it starts with their capacity. What can we do immediately to help you feel better that's going to have an accumulative effect? So that is a major part of my work, alongside helping them to come back to themselves. When it comes to early menopause, I've spoken to lots of people around that. There are some good resources online when I go into workplaces and give talks and workshops and things around menopause as a whole, whether it's talking about these foundationals or my approach, or if they just want a menopause awareness session. I always make sure to give them some more pointers to help the people who are often left out on the sidelines, like early menopause. If you're going through it in your 30s, it was not on your radar in this decade to go through this, so you can feel like really alienated from the rest of the menopause conversation. You don't identify with aging and someone in their 50s who might be going through it, but there's some lovely things online that can get you into communities where you feel a little bit more heard and understood. It's a tricky one. It can happen at any age. It's not common, but there are large numbers of women who do experience early menopause is when your periods stop before the age of 45. Premature menopause is where it's your periods stop because of ovarian insufficiency, not because of other things. We can have periods stop through all sorts of things, can't we? Malnutrition and things can affect that. But if it's ovarian insufficiency and the ovaries have stopped doing their job before the age of 40, then that's much earlier than your body was intending for that process to happen, and it hasn't set up the things that it would for a normal menopause. Like in my case, going through it, I'm 46 now, so I'm knee deep in perimenopause. So for those women in their 30s, they need medical help and attention, and don't wait. Get that attention straight away. If you think that you're going through it, then get some advice. You're going to need some tests. It's not something that goes away on its own, and it does affect our health from like day one. If we're going through it at 30, 35, it could be because your body has then decided that that's what you're going to go through, or it could be because of a medical issue, hysterectomy, so on. It could be because of cancer treatment that can put you into not just surgery, but the drugs to control the diseases that can then affect our hormonal output, that then can put us into post-menopause overnight. So I don't want to scare people with this, but the more we know, the less scary it can become, and the more aware, the better chance we have of getting the help at the right time that we need it, because that's really important.
What do you mean? If I just ignore it for long enough, it'll just go away, Angie.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I think that self-awareness I think is important and I'm a big believer in prevention is better than the cure and a lot of the times in that sense, but that is a lot of amazing information to help support people as well. And I think it's the other aspect of it is like I think we need to get curious and question things. Ask, why is that, right? And if we don't find the answers, look for it somewhere else. And I love that everybody's so individual that it can't be a, one, like you can't band-aid it, in that sense that it fixes everybody. So I love that personal journey and getting to know who we are, how we work, how we move through things, what is in alignment with us, what is not. Um, and I think a big part of curiosity is a good way without, like you say, without the shame, without the fear, without and more of kind of like, yeah, it is what it is. How do we move through that, kind of a thing. And I think finding answers really early on is quite good as well, because I think when we first start going through it, you don't know whether you are, whether you're not, then you have symptoms and then you don't have symptoms.
Mm.
And I know from my journey, I was like, okay, what's happening to me chemically? Like, what is happening to my body? What is like, are there deficiencies? What is low? What needs to be like, where am I in this? And then when it was like, okay, your mood swings are because your estrogen is high, your testosterone, or this type of your testosterone, which I didn't even know there were different types of testosterone, is low. And that's why you're like, because I'm like, I'm usually quite calm and I meditate. And I'm not, all of a sudden, I'm like 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds flat. I'm like, where did that come from? I don't even know who I am. But understanding that absolutely allows you to take that, oh, okay, this is what I'm going through. Now I know how to deal with it. And it actually brings in quite a bit of like I suppose, an exhale in a sense of like going, oh, okay, this is what I'm going through. I understand it. Now I know how to navigate it. I know that until this is balanced, that I might be in this situation. So I'm going to take more time to breathe. I'm going to take more time to actually go, okay, wait a minute. you know, with my teenagers, it's like, I need to walk before we have this conversation right now, kind of a thing, and then I'll come back, or whatever it might be. But I think that, yeah, I agree with you, and find out there's so many resources, and if they don't fit, keep looking until you find the one that does, that is in alignment. And then sometimes just by naming it, I think
Yeah.
we know what to do with it, right?
I get a lot of questions that most people who come for a consultation with me have the first question, and then a lot of others that come off that. But often the first question is what I'm feeling this, and this, and this because of menopause?
Yeah.
And when I can give them an answer, you can see that they're visibly, right, okay. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Shall we meditate?
Yeah, I was just thinking that is perfect with these moments of. I was just reflecting some of the experiences I've had with people. It's like, oh, okay, I see you're like you must be going through something because your behavior is different. It's like I know what to do when I go through that, but meditation is not going to help all these situations.
Mm.
But yeah, thank you so much, Angie, for sharing. Just before we go into meditation, since we always feel so calm and relaxed, how are people best reaching out to you, Angie?
They can send me an email at info@angiegarton.com. They can have a look at my website. I'm currently getting a few changes done, but it's still there, angiegarton.com. I'm on Facebook as well, either through my name or Finding Yourself in Menopause.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'll make sure those are added to the description of the video and in podcast if you listen to the audio only. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just lighting incense before we start. Okay. Okay, shall we? I think it's my turn.
It is, yes.
I was wondering who was going to, so I'm sure it's me. I'm not prepared.
That's right. Over to you, Angie.
Get a drum.
Yeah. Okay, let's close our eyes. Let's take a couple of deep breaths. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I'm going to invite you to breathe in calm and exhale any tension, stress that you're holding onto within your body. And drop your shoulders, relax your facial muscles, your jaw. And bring your attention from the outside world internally. And just breathe. Notice how deep you're breathing. And try and slow it down just a little bit more. Taking longer to inhale, longer at the pause, and a little bit longer as you exhale. Now find a rhythm of breathing that is ideal for you. And now I'm going to ask you, we invite you to scan your body and take note if there's a place or an organ within your body that is needing your attention right now. And I'm now going to invite you to have a conversation with this place or this organ without judgment, with curiosity. Asks, If it were to speak, what would it say? Ask it what it needs you to know. Ask, how can you support it? What does it need physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? Ask if there's any behavioral shifts it would like you to do. And one last question. What is one thing that you can do today to support this place, this organ, this part of you? Now, with love and compassion, thank this place, this organ, for sharing its information. Offer it love. And when we return back from outside of our bodies, let's action. Let's commit to putting things into place to support this organ, to support our bodies, to support our health, to support ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And as we thank this organ once more, we start making our way back into the here and now with gratitude, with understanding, with compassion. Take one more deep breath and exhale. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. That was lovely. A bit of an eye-opener. Definitely got my body wants a nap after this. It's like, oh, great. Wonderful.
My
Thank you
jaw
so
was like, no more new events for the rest of the year. Like, okay, I got it. No more speaking events. I've got enough for this year. Okay. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Angie and Natasha. It's been an honor. And yeah, looking forward to sharing this with everyone. And I'll make sure I'll look up, was it the British Menopause
Society, yeah.
Society? I'll add that as a link as well. But yeah, thank you so much for coming along again, and look forward to catching up with you again in the future.
Yeah.
I know, and one thing I must say congratulate on is like running your age in miles. I'm inspired, and I just had this thought. It's like, what's Angie going to do when she's 80? And so, well, you know what? It's a wonderful habit. So congratulations on your
Oh, thank you.
inspirational journey.
It was
Great. I'll let you go. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, everybody.
See you.
Thanks, Angie.
Bye.
lovely.